Hello, and thanks for joining us for Week 16 of Big Game Bound. Only 2 weeks left in the regular season, the first playoff berths. They've been locked up, 4 in each conference, but there's still a bunch to be sorted out in the final 2 weeks. And with so many big games this week, we should have a pretty clear picture by Monday night. Coming up on this week's show, we'll tell you who won the Player of the Week honors in the NFL. Ty Halleck joins us to talk playoffs and how teams prepare for them. Our Big Game Bound correspondents break down the big games between Buffalo and New England, Green Bay and Minnesota, Dallas and Philadelphia, and also the Titans and the Saints. We'll start with our big shout-outs. The quarterbacks lead the way. Drew Brees made history twice on Monday night. He threw 4 touchdown passes and became the all-time touchdown leader, passing Peyton Manning. He also completed 29 of 30 passes, a new record for efficiency. He's the Offensive Player of the Week in the NFC. Lamar Jackson is the AFC Offensive Player of the Week. Jackson threw 5 touchdown passes in the Ravens' 42-21 victory over the Jets. He also broke Michael Vick's rushing record for most yards by a quarterback in a season. Can you say MVP? The AFC Defensive Player of the Week is Buffalo cornerback Tre'Davious White. He had 2 interceptions and 4 tackles, 1 for a loss, in the Bills' big win over the Steelers. The NFC Defensive Player of the Week is Arizona cornerback Patrick Peterson. He recorded 7 tackles and an interception, and the Cardinals win over the Browns. This is the 5th time in Peterson's career he's won Player of the Week honors. Time for What the Halleck. Ty Halleck is our Big Game Bound NFL analyst. He joins us each week. Ty played 7 seasons in the NFL with the Bears, the Jaguars, and the Lions. Ty, 2 weeks left in the regular season. The Baltimore Ravens have already clinched the NFC North. They've won 10 straight games. How do you handle this now if you're John Harbaugh? Do you keep charging hard and playing all your guys and risk injury? Or do you scale back a little bit, rest some guys up for the playoffs, and risk losing momentum?
Well, I think there's a happy medium there, right? In the National Football League, you want to win games, and quite frankly, they want to secure home field advantage throughout. You got to play your guys, and you got to keep them in rhythm. You got to keep them in meetings and engaged and doing the things they've been doing for all this time. But I think the coaching staff and the players alike will be looking for those opportunities. Once they feel like they've gotten in what they need to, I think they'll look to pull some of these guys back, particularly at quarterback. I mean, they have an opportunity maybe to get Robert Griffith in there and let him do his thing, but you're going to do it with the thought process of still winning football games, because you do want to keep that momentum, and just taking guys out and leaving them out doesn't help in that. They want to keep these guys engaged. They want them playing. They want them competitive, because once the playoffs start, it's certainly there. So I think there's a little bit of balance there, and a lot of it will be about keeping these guys healthy, but it's still about winning in the National Football League and securing the spots that they want into the playoffs.
Cowboys and Eagles, 7-7, tied for first in the NFC East. They play each other this week. Meanwhile, the Vikings are sitting there with 10 wins, and you're looking at the 49ers and the Seahawks. 2 of those teams are going to end up being wild cards, and one will probably have to go on the road and play the Cowboys or the Eagles, whoever wins that game. Should the NFL start considering changing that, where you get a home game just because you win a division and give it to the teams with the best record when they meet?
I think absolutely, and I think that this is part of that case. And it's not going to happen all the time, but when teams play at a high level of football, like the Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, Seattle Seahawks, San Francisco 49ers, however it all shakes out, look, when you win 11, 12 games, you should be rewarded for winning double digits. If you just limp through and happen to win your division and you're a 500 team or just above 500, and yet there's a team behind you that's won 4 more ball games, particularly if there's any kind of crossover scenarios where they've played, you should give, in my mind, deference to those teams that have been successful throughout the year. They've earned the opportunity to have those games. So, yes, I think it's something they should look at. It won't be an every year type scenario. We'll run into this probably. But when they do, there should be some kind of a ranking system or ability to look at teams that have been successful and played at a high level the whole season long, like some of these teams have.
All right, a couple of weeks left now. The Lions have come out and said that Matt Patricia's coming back. Which teams do you think will be making coaching changes once this season ends?
Well, and I think a lot of this happens to, when you see somebody like Ron Rivera get pulled when he did, certainly he's going to be a formidable one to look at. do we have somebody that is as good as Ron Rivera? And when you look at guys like Pat Shurmur, who I know is a good coach and has came in there, it's early on for him as well, but does he align with what you're ultimately going to get done? So I think the New York Giants have a decision to make. And regardless of what happens with the Dallas Cowboys, I think Jason Garrett has been there for quite some time. They're not at the level they need to be. Freddie Kitchens, look, there was a lot to be said about the Cleveland Browns, the talent they had, the young quarterback, the receivers they had, and they have not gotten done what they have gotten done up to this point. Doug Marrone of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, the whole situation with the quarterback there and what they paid Foles versus what they're getting in Minshew in production. I think he's going to be looked at. Dan Quinn of the Falcons and Anthony Lynn of the Chargers too. Although they've had a lot of injuries, 12-4 as a 2018 season, and they've lost a lot of games this year. Again, granted, like every other coach that's on this list, there's injuries, there's a story, but I think all those guys are going to be looked at closely.
Yeah, and that's a team that's just found ways to lose. Game in, game out. All right, new top 5, and it does not include the New England Patriots. I think that's the first time this year.
Well, and I think ultimately what it comes down to is the Seattle Seahawks and 49ers, even though those guys you could even flip-flop those maybe because, 49ers recently lost to the Falcons, which was a tough game for them. But that happens in the National Football League. It just goes to show you if you leave somebody close, that's what happens. But Seattle and 49ers play here in 2 weeks. That's going to be a huge game. Big games coming up. The Chiefs, I think, are playing well. Big game against Denver, winning there. The Saints, Drew Brees, 29 of 30, gets their records for touchdowns. Unbelievable. I think they're still playing very good football. And the Baltimore Ravens, of course, you look at them, great quarterback. We're talking about, do they rest? Do they keep the momentum? They're certainly in position to have, hopefully, if they finish out the way they hope to do, having that home field advantage the whole way through. So I think, when you look out just outside of this, Green Bay, Minnesota, the New England Patriots, there's a lot of things that can happen. But I think right now this is about right where we're at.
Chiefs fascinate me right now because their defense is really starting to pick up. And obviously the Ravens' defense has been fantastic. Ravens 49ers, that would be a great Super Bowl. I know we've already seen it once, but yeah, it should be a fun couple of weeks to close out the season, and the playoffs are going to be off the charts. Thanks, John.
Yep, it should be very good.
Well, the first big game of the weekend takes place in Foxborough, where the Buffalo Bills take on the New England Patriots, and this could be a game for first place. We'll start with our Patriots correspondent, Yanni Caracas. Yanni, since the loss to the Ravens, the Patriots just haven't looked right. But against the Bengals on Sunday, the defense shined, 4 picks and a fumble recovery. Brady gets all the headlines, but if they're going to get back to the Super Bowl, will it be the defense that carries this team?
Yes, it will, and it's been the defense all season that has carried this team. It's reminiscent of Brady's first Super Bowl year way back in 2001, and we were hoping the Cincinnati game was the game the offense put it all together against a one-win Bengals team, but despite getting 34 points up on the scoreboard, there was a pick 6. They had some good field position, so it's not like the offense was a complete juggernaut, so they're going to struggle a bit against Buffalo and expect this game on Saturday to be one that's really won by the defense, as it's been the case for the Pats all year.
Yeah, and how weird is it to see a Pro Bowl team without Tom Brady? Yanni, I wonder what the odds would have been in Vegas before the year started that this game between the Patriots and Bills would have any meaning in the AFC race. But here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And the scenario is this. If the Patriots win, they win the AFC East. For the Bills to win the AFC East for the first time since 1995, they'll have to go 2-0 and the Pats 0-2. That's because the Patriots hold a tiebreaker within a common opponent situation. But you're right. It's been a long, long time since the December game between the Bills and Patriots has mattered. And around here, we're sort of enjoying this because a lot of times in Week 16 or 17, the Patriots seed is already locked up. And not only do the Patriots need to win this game to win the division, they need to win this game to hold off the Chiefs because the Patriots do not want to fall into that 3 seed and miss out on the bye. Every time they've won a Super Bowl in this Brady era, they've had a bye. So that is critical to them to win out the last 2 games.
Yeah, it seems like every couple of years there is another controversy surrounding the Patriots Deflategate, Spygate, and now the Bengals catch them videotaping their sideline. Does anything happen to Belichick here?
I don't think so, because I think the NFL is smart enough to know and judge this based on intent. So what do I mean by that? Spygate back in 2006, 2007, the NFL could prove this was orchestrated from the top down. Bill Belichick, we want the other team's signals to provide us advantage when scouting them. I really think that this was a situation of pure stupidity. The guy doing the documentary for Kraft Sports Production was shooting the video to get the perspective of what the scout would be seeing. Do I think Bill Belichick told this videographer, hey, I need video of the Bengals from behind a one-win team? No. So I think the Patriots broke the rules. They don't get the benefit of the doubt because of their history, but I don't think this was orchestrated from the top down through football operations with Bill Belichick. So I think it'll be a hefty fine, but I could be wrong, but I don't think they'll come down on Belichick.
Yeah, he's obviously one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, but what is his legacy 20, 30 years from now, Yanni?
You know, I think this will be something that's mentioned in terms of the Spygate thing, and Bill Belichick will always say every little minute detail. He's always going up to the line to try to get any advantage he can. But ultimately, I don't think it's a huge tarnish on his legacy. As he likes to say, when Deflategate came up and they brought up Spygate, it was something everyone was doing. If it gave us 1% advantage, we were wrong for doing it. So do I think them looking at the other team's signals when someone else could be doing it in the stadium enable them to win 6 Super Bowls? No. But it's certainly something that will come up in his story when it's all said and done. But at the end of the day, there's been other controversies in terms of crowd noise and signals and other stuff throughout the NFL, but because it's the Patriots, it's always a bigger deal. That's not to excuse their actions, but that's just sort of how it works with the Patriots. We never can just talk about football around here. There's always some sort of controversy.
Another huge matchup this week is Packers-Vikings on Monday Night Football. The NFC North is up for grabs now. To break this game down, we call on Burke Griffin from Green Bay. Burke, we know Packers-Bears is one of the biggest rivalries in the NFL. How big is Packers-Vikings in the North?
Well, I think it's the biggest right now based on each team's success, especially Green Bay. They've owned the North with 9 division titles since 2002. Minnesota and Chicago each have 4, while Detroit, they don't have any. So you got to go all the way back to 1992 when Mike Holmgren took over here in Green Bay. Dennis Green was hired by the Vikings. Those two guys coached together in San Francisco, and friends quickly became foes. From Randy Moss to Anthony Barr knocking down Aaron Rodgers late a couple years ago, breaking his collarbone. This is a very bitter rivalry. Packers-Bears has been so one-sided in Green Bay's favor. This one definitely takes center stage. And with a win Monday, they would clinch the NFC North here in Green Bay.
Yeah, Packers are in the playoffs, but a win, they do clinch, like you said. How did they turn it around from the last couple of years? Was it as simple as a coaching change? Was it the job they did in the draft to shore up the defense? Or was it Rodgers staying healthy?
I think it was a combination of all of those things. Let's start with the draft. That was a huge part of it. Darnell Savage Jr. has had a big impact, even more so than their first-rounder, Rashawn Gary, although he did get his second sack on Sunday against Chicago. It's also been a lot about the free agents. GM Brian Gutekunst, he made some moves. 3 starters on defense. Adrian Amos, he's been steady at safety. And the Smiths, both Preston and Za'Darius, they've combined for 21.5 sacks together. The defense is in their second year under Mike Pettin. They bend but don't break. Green Bay's 23rd in yards per game, but 9th in points allowed. They're also 2nd in turnover ratio. And on the other side, they take care of the football. Now, Aaron Rodgers, he hasn't been particularly great this season either, but he isn't careless. Just 2 interceptions all season long. Both of those were off tip passes, and right now they're second only to the Saints with 9 total turnovers.
All right, 49ers, that loss left a lot of people questioning this team, but they bounced back nicely with 3 straight wins, but those were against the Giants, the Redskins, and the Bears. How much does this team need a win right now over a playoff caliber opponent before the playoffs begin?
You know, correct. The Bears were kind of in the same position before they played the Packers. They were reeling. They won 3 straight, and everyone said, oh, you don't want to face Chicago. Look, none of their wins were dominating in any shape or form. In fact, all of them were a 1-score game in the 4th quarter before the Packers finally pulled off the win. This will be a statement game for this particular team. They have stretches, especially to start each half. When the plays are scripted, they look awesome. The offense just works their way right down the field, humming along. Then we have what we saw against the Bears on Sunday, where they finished the game with 5 straight punts and 4 3-and-outs. A win over the Vikings would be huge for their confidence going into the postseason. A loss, they still have a chance to host a playoff game, but in all likelihood, they will likely face Minnesota back at Lambeau Field on Wild Card weekend. This will be a huge litmus test for Green Bay.
Another big NFC divisional game is Dallas at Philadelphia, a couple of 7-7 teams that will be playing for first place in the NFC East. Our Cowboys correspondent is Matt Roberts. Matt, who are the Cowboys? Are they the team that thrashed the Rams last week, or the one that left us scratching our heads most of the season?
I think that's a fantastic question, one that a lot of Cowboys fans are still trying to figure out. Obviously, this team has been so Jekyll and Hyde over the last couple of games, last couple of weeks. But this is the way that this team was built, and I think this is the vision that Jerry Jones had for this team when he built it along the offensive line, paying Zeke Elliott that money. So I think this is the way that they want to win games, and we'll see if it continues moving on into the next couple weeks.
Well, the Cowboys embarrassed the Eagles in their first meeting. Then they lost 4 of their next 6. Jason Garrett told his team to reestablish their DNA. Did they do that with the win over the Rams, and can they carry it over to Philly?
Yeah, I really think that they can. This, as we talked about, this is kind of the formula that they had envisioned when they built this team, and they're going in to play a Philadelphia team that is banged up. It is in Philly, but honestly, since Dak Prescott arrived here in Dallas, they have really owned this division, trying to win back-to-back division championships, which is something that has not been done in this division in quite some time. So going up to Philly, I know that this team has been very Jekyll and Hyde throughout the last couple of weeks, but this is a team over the last couple of years we've seen under Jason Garrett that when their back is against the wall, they do come out fighting and they do come out and play their best game. I feel like that's what we saw last week against the Rams, and now we know that this is the game they've been pointing to for weeks. Even when they played terribly, they've been pointing at this game and saying, all right, if we win the Eagles game, it doesn't matter because we'll win the NFC East. So I do think that this will carry over and they will have a good game against the Eagles this weekend.
Ezekiel Elliott, 24 carries, 2 touchdowns. Dak Prescott only threw 23 passes. Is that a better recipe for success for this team? More Zeke, less Dak?
Yeah, this is, this team built along the offensive line with Zeke Elliott. There's a reason that they gave him all that money, gave Zeke Elliott all that money. They want this team to be able to run the ball and play some defense, something that they were able to do a little bit last week. Dak Prescott has been dealing with a bit of a hand injury. It's unclear as to what exactly the extent of that injury is, but he has shown that he is able to make plays with his arm, and this can be a passing offense, but they're at their best when Zeke Elliott has the ball. The offense is running through him, and Dak Prescott can make some of those complementary plays with his arm and with his feet a little bit. I think that's another area. Right now he's a little banged up, so I don't know how much they're going to run him. But when you have Zeke going the way that he is, that opens everything up for Dak in that offense. So I think it all starts with Zeke, and you paid him all that money, so you might as well get him going in that offense.
Any chance Jason Garrett survives if the Cowboys lose this game?
It's tough to tell. I certainly think you have to wait and see how things end up this season, because I know that there's kind of a feeling that Jason Garrett's gone no matter what. But if this team plays like they did against the Rams, they can kind of get going on a little bit of a roll, work their way into the playoffs, win a playoff game or 2. I know it seems unlikely at this point, but I think Jerry Jones wants in such a bad way for this to work with Jason Garrett. That's his guy. He's groomed him, and he's scared to death that if he does go somewhere else and have success, he's going to have missed out on that window in Dallas. So I think if they lose the game and miss out on the playoffs, I think that he survives the game and that he'll coach in Week 17. But beyond that, I think he's out the door. But, if this team can get into the playoffs somehow, make a run, maybe, it sounds crazy to say right now, but if they can get into maybe a Final Four, then I think Jerry Jones is looking for any way to keep Jason Garrett. So certainly going to be an interesting saga to unfold over the next couple weeks. It's always exciting with the Dallas Cowboys.
One more big matchup for you. The Saints at the Titans. That's a Sunday at 1 o'clock game. And we welcome in Corey Curtis. He is the host of TN Nation. And Corey, I'm a little embarrassed we haven't had you on yet. Titans kind of snuck up on everybody with that 4-game win streak. They're still in the AFC South picture, still in the playoff picture. But, man, the wins are going to be hard to come by these last 2 weeks.
Well, when you go 9-7 virtually every year, Jack, you tend to sneak up on people when you're pushing the envelope. Unfortunately, they could be headed for a 4th straight 9 and 7, and they're going to have to split the last two, like you talked about, just to get there. They've got the Saints here this weekend, and then they've got to go to Houston to finish out the season. Those are two teams both playing really well, and unfortunately for the Titans, both of those teams still have plenty to play for, and it would seem doubtful that they'll be resting their players. The Titans have everything to play for. 2 wins, and they're not in the playoffs for sure, but they got a really good chance.
All right, so the Saints have a short work week to prepare. They're coming off that great performance. Drew Brees made history, and are they catching them now at a time where perhaps they have a hangover?
Well, you would think, typically this is a kind of hangover game. They go on Monday Night Football. Drew Brees is unbelievable, breaks the all-time touchdown record, and they made the Colts just look like a 1AA football team. But like I've said, the Saints have a ton to play for. They want to play all of their playoff games in that dome. So they cannot afford to come here with San Francisco also at 11-3 and drop this football game. You've got Sean Payton there. You've got Drew Brees there. You got a lot of veterans on that football team. I have to believe the Saints will come here ready to play. Now, if you're the Titans, you like getting them outdoors and on the grass. That could be an advantage for them. It's a huge game for the Titans, but it's not the biggest game for them because it's an NFC game. If the Titans are going to drop one of these last 2 games, this is the one to lose.
All right, so now how much of this recent push by the Titans can be attributed to the move to Ryan Tannehill at quarterback that seemed like a bit of a gamble at the time?
Well, I mean, they were really floundering on offense, and he has helped with his accuracy and decisiveness and his ability to push the ball downfield to propel the offense. He certainly has played very, very well. He's up around 2,000 yards in these 8 games, and I believe he's up around 15, 16 touchdown passes. He has helped propel this Titans offense to an all-new level. But when you look at really why this team exploded, before this last weekend, they averaged 37.5 points a game over the previous 4 games during that 4-game win streak. That was all keyed by the run game. Tannehill's a big part of it, don't get me wrong. But Derrick Henry went for over 100 yards in all 4 of those games, and Ryan Tannehill didn't even throw 30 passes in any of those 4 games. In fact, in the 3 games since he took over, where he has thrown 30 passes or more, they've scored their fewest points, 20, 21, and 24. And that's not to say it's his fault or he's not good enough. It just goes to show you with this football team, if they're going to have an offensive explosion, it is keyed by big number 22, Derrick Henry, who was just named to his first Pro Bowl.
Yeah, he's having another sensational year, over 1,300 yards rushing. What's the latest on his health?
Well, I mean, this is his first big year. He finished last year strong. He has been even better this year. He has been a dynamic force for this team. Finally, the physical presence that they thought they were drafting when they got him out of Alabama. But there is a problem with his hamstring. It has been a problem for a few weeks now, and it caused him to come out of the Oakland game before the 4th quarter. You could really see in the second half of that game the loss of his explosiveness. One of the things that makes him special at 6'3", 240 pounds is if he gets to the second level, he can just outrun people at that massive size. Well, we saw this last week when they lost to the Texans. He still had the ability to push the ball into the pile and move it forward for that 5 to 15 yards, but he didn't have the ability to open it up and get that breakaway speed. That's a big concern for this team as they played the Texans. In fact, they plugged in tight end Jonnu Smith for 1 carry at tailback last week. He went 57 yards, and it just showed how much Derrick Henry was hurting for the Titans in that game. He just doesn't have that 5th gear. I don't even know if he's going to have a 4th gear for the Saints, but I do know this: he'll be out there.
Patriotism is a big part of sporting events in this country. Games never start until after our national anthem is played. The Stars and Stripes flies in every venue. And more now we're seeing tributes to veterans. One salute in particular is really starting to make an impact, the POW MIA Chair of Honor. To learn more about that, we welcome in Larry Hall, the Indianapolis Colts Vice President of Special Projects and Historical Affairs, and Mike Clark, President of Indiana Rolling Thunder. Larry, how did the Colts get involved in this project?
Well, everyone at the Colts has just so much respect for people that have served and are serving now, and certainly those that will serve in the future. We wanted to make sure that there's opportunities for us to show that respect and admiration This came about 5.5, 6 years ago. I'd heard about the POWMIA Chair of Honor, partnered with Rolling Thunder of Indiana, and came up with an idea and a place in the stadium to get it displayed. And then because we don't own or operate the stadium, we had certain protocols we had to go through to make it happen. But it's really been a cool part of our game day presentation now, and certainly something that we honor each home game.
Mike, you served. What does that chair mean to you?
Well, currently we have about 82,000 American service members that are still unaccounted for since World War II. Indiana alone has about 1,700 that are still unaccounted for. So when you look at this chair, the purpose of this chair is to make sure that the public, to bring awareness to the public, to never forget these 82,000 American heroes that went off to battle and still haven't come home yet. And to the family members of the POWs and MIAs, it's a reminder to them that we will never forget their loved ones that went off to battle and haven't came home yet. And hopefully someday that they will, and they will finally find closure.
Mike, when you see that chair on the video board in the stadium, you see the salutes, what emotions hit you?
It's just hard to relate what that means. I mean, it just hits you right in the heart. And, you know, when you see that chair up on that big screen when they play the national anthem, it just brings a lot of pride to you, a lot of pride to the heart. I really appreciate Larry here and the coach actually putting that chair in, because it's a real great tribute to the American heroes that went off to battle and the family members when they see that chair. It's a real special meaning to them.
Now, Larry, what sort of feedback have the Colts received since you guys unveiled that chair, Chair of Honor in Indy?
Well, over the course of the last 5 years, different people that come to the game on a regular basis, and those that may be a first-time visitor that I've talked to on the phone or in person on game day, and I've been very fortunate to never miss a Colts home game in 36 seasons, and this has been in our stadium now for the last 5 since 2014. You know, they note how nice the people are, certainly the building itself, but that chair comes up a lot because it is shown on the big screen. We have it on a prominent place in what would be the southeast corner of the building in the seating bowl. And it's really kind of up on a pedestal where it belongs, with the American flag behind it, and obviously we try to keep a very nice lighting on it. But a lot of positive feedback from people, and on occasion someone will say, hey, you know, I had an uncle years ago that obviously just didn't make it back and is still listed as MIA. So those kind of things really resonate with all of us, you know, at the Colts and here in Indianapolis.
That'll do it for Week 16 of Big Game Bound. A big thanks to Ty Halleck, our correspondents, Corey Curtis, Yanni Caracas, Matt Roberts, and Burt Griffin. For our producer, Spencer Wheelock, and our crew in Grand Rapids, I'm Jack Doles. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time on Big Game Bound.